Greetings, friends. I send you warm feelings, as well as my deep gratitude for taking the time to tune in to this presentation titled The Law of One, an Introduction. Through the course of this presentation, I will offer my attempt to distill and communicate the basic ideas, concepts, and philosophy of the Law of One. My hope is to assist those who are new to this material by familiarizing them with the unique terminology used, as well as providing context and some translation of the rather non-colloquial language one finds in reading the Law of One. My name is Aaron Merritt. I'm an independent researcher and spiritual seeker who has been deeply touched by this work, and I find it both meaningful and joyful to share the Law of One with those who seek it. I am by no means an expert, nor do I consider myself to be in any way an authority with respect to this work. I feel, however, that there is genuine and profound benefit to be had in reading or studying the Law of One by those who seek truth, those who desire to evolve toward a more unified and coherent understanding of reality, and those who consider themselves to be on a path of seeking increased love and wisdom, of healing and service. With that said, please understand that what I will present here is simply my own interpretation, limited or flawed as it may be. I invite you to engage your own inner faculties of discernment. Please take what inspires or feels true to you and leave behind anything that you find no value in. Listen for resonance and allow whichever threads of information that empower, clarify, or facilitate understanding to support your own journey of self-awareness. With that disclaimer, let's get started. We begin with a quote from Session 4 of the Raw Material. The Law of One, though beyond the limitations of name, as you call vibratory sound complexes, may be approximated by stating that all things are one, that there is no polarity, no right or wrong, no disharmony, but only identity. All is one, and that one is love-light, light-love, the infinite creator. So, to paraphrase, one could simply say, all is one, all is self, all is the creator. I'd like to note here that to simply seek an intellectual or rational understanding of this core concept is not the point. The path of seeking a true and complete inner knowing of the Law of One is a timeless effort, spanning lifetimes upon lifetimes. The arc of all souls' journeys bend towards this universal truth. The previous quote suggests that the Law of One is beyond the limitations of name, or language, to express. It can only be approximated, pointed to, or hinted at. When we speak of the Law of One, we are essentially referring to a universal philosophy of cosmic unity and absolute oneness. We are also referring to the books titled The Law of One, or the Raw Material, which are transcriptions of a very unique channeled working that took place between January of 1981 and March of 1984. The source of the channel is an advanced extraterrestrial entity known as Ra, who describe themselves as an humble messenger of the Law of One. The group who undertook this channeling work was LoO Research, comprised of Don Elkins, Carla Ruckert, and Jim McCarty. In the time since the books were made available to the public, the material has become known as one of the most accurate and high-integrity sources of metaphysical knowledge and inspiration. It provides a coherent, life-serving narrative that can act as a sort of touchstone to those students and seekers attempting to make sense of the human journey and the experience of being alive on the planet today. The website, www.lawofone.info, provides for free the most accurate and up-to-date text of the transcripts of all 106 channeling sessions that comprise the full content of the Law of One, or Raw Material. The site is well-indexed, searchable, and categorized by session, date, and topic. It includes notes and commentary by members of the LoO Research Group, presented in line with the original context, as well as original audio clips of the sessions themselves. This is the go-to resource for anyone interested in beginning their own reading and study of this work. The Raw Material has also been published as a series of 5 books, as seen here. The books can be purchased directly from LoO Research's online store or through other online retailers. The first volume was published under the title The Raw Material, with the subsequent volumes published as simply The Law of One books 2 through 5. So now let's explore the identity of the source of these teachings. Who is Ra? To understand the answer to this question, it is necessary to suspend disbelief in relation to several sacrosanct principles ensconced in consensus reality, the sanitized story of what is real and what is not, given in textbooks and mainstream media. Ra described themselves as a sixth-density social memory complex, originating from the planet Venus. So let's unpack this. Ra is an advanced extraterrestrial race, 2.6 billion years beyond our current evolutionary stage as Earth humans. They have long since unified their consciousness as individual members of their planetary collective, now enjoying the experience of a sort of super-melding of minds into a collective consciousness that can call upon the wisdom, perspectives, and experiences of all the individual members or souls within their group. The limitations that we experience at our current evolutionary stage have long since been surpassed by the Ra group. The inherent sense of separation that we experience, the dependence solely upon 5 physical senses to perceive the true nature of the universe, the illusion of linear time, and the boundedness to the local reality of our physical bodies have all been overcome. Furthermore, Ra states, "We are those who are of the law of one. In our vibration, the polarities are harmonized, the complexities are simplified, and the paradoxes have their solution. We are one. That is our nature and our purpose." They use the name Ra to identify themselves, not because this is a name they chose themselves, but because this is the name that the Egyptians associated with them when they visited Earth in our ancient past. They are very close to graduating or harvesting from 6th to 7th density. We will cover more on densities later. Here is a quote from Ra in response to a question about their background and origin. "I am Ra. I am, with the social memory complex of which I am a part, one of those who voyaged outward from another planet within your own solar system, as this entity would call it. The planetary influence was that you call Venus. We are a race old in your measures. Our physical beings were what you would call golden. We were tall and somewhat delicate. Our physical body complex covering, which you call the integument, had a golden luster." While the images related to Ra that we are familiar with from ancient Egypt tend to evoke a falcon or hawk-headed being, Ra themselves suggest that when they walked among us, they were tall, delicate, and had golden skin, perhaps with a light sheen or glow. The group responsible for the success of the Ra contact, as well as the publication of the fruits of that contact, are known as LL Research, the LL standing for Love and Light. The channeling group was made up of a trio of dedicated researchers and seekers of truth. Don Elkins was the founder of the group, the roots of which go back to 1962. Don's role was central to the work. He called upon his many years of research and experimentation with channeling to form the line of questions asked to Ra. Carla Ruckert served as the instrument through which Ra spoke. She approached her involvement in this work with the utmost dedication and desire to be of service. She possessed the unique ability to enter into a deep state of trance, allowing Ra to actually speak directly through her without any conscious interference from her personality or ego. Jim McCarty provided the final stabilizing leg of the triad, serving as the scribe, technician, and energetic space holder for the contact during their sessions. The Ra contact is unique among channeling works, due largely to the natural harmony experienced and cultivated by the 3 members. This group harmony, combined with the individual talents of the members, met the unique conditions required to establish lasting and stable contact with Ra, who offer a, quote, narrow-band contact. Another key aspect of the channeling they performed is that it was what they refer to as trance channeling. What sets this type of channeling apart from almost any other form of channeling you might encounter is the fact that the entity offering the information was able to speak directly through the instrument of Carla's body. To accomplish this, Carla would enter into a deep meditation prior to the session. Her conscious awareness would then leave the space of her physical body and be projected into what you might refer to as the astral plane, where Ra would then guard and protect her. Ra was then able to use Carla's body complex in order to directly vocalize their message. This translates to the conditions where information can be given directly from Ra's consciousness without the need for translation from the channeler's mind complex. This is especially significant when we consider the fact that Ra's evolutionary station in late 6th density is quite advanced from ours in late 3rd density, and the consciousness or perspective from that advanced station is not easily translated to our frame of understanding. Most channeling work undergoes some degree of distortion in the translation that must take place between the transmitter, the entity sending thoughts and information, and receiver, the entity perceiving this in their mind. In the case of the Ra contact, no such translation was needed, and therefore the quality and nature of the information is quite unique. In order to cultivate the necessary power and protection to sustain the ongoing sessions, the group performed white magical protection rituals. They went to great lengths to assure the working space and the conditions required for success were met impeccably. They approached the work as scientists and spiritual adepts, sourcing a level of dedication, skill, and the earnest desire to serve others that produce the results we see in the outputs of the 106 channeling sessions that make up their contact with Ra. Here we see photographs showing the procedures undertaken by the group to prepare for contact. On the left image, we see Jim combing Carla's long hair, which acted as a sort of antenna and needed to be tended in a certain way for optimal conditions supporting the contact. We can also see the table beyond Carla's head, which contained ritual objects that were supportive to the contact through conditioning the minds of the group towards sacredness or holiness. In the image on the right, we see Don checking for precise alignment between the table, the ritual objects, and Carla's head and body. You can also see that there are 3 separate microphones placed on Carla's chest, used to record Ra speaking. This redundancy of recording equipment became necessary as they experienced an unusual amount of electrical equipment malfunction, due most likely to the non-ordinary energetics present during the Ra contact. In this photograph, we see Don in the background, sitting in his chair, viewing his interview questions and notes. Carla in the foreground, draped in white, is carefully prepared to be as effective a channeling instrument as possible. Here, we see a close-up of Carla, now fully prepared and in position for the contact work and the channeling interviews to take place. This image shows Jim sitting in meditation facing Carla. Aside from tending the recording devices as needed, he would energetically hold space for the duration of the sessions, helping to empower and stabilize the collective field for optimal results. So let's now turn towards the content of what is described and taught in the Law of One. These are some of the key concepts and topics: Cosmology and Cosmogony, Distortion and Illusion, the Octave and the Densities, Soul Evolution, the Veil of Forgetting, Space-Time and Time-Space, Polarity and the Two Paths, the Social Memory Complex, the Confederation and Council of Saturn, the Orion Group, Wanderers, UFOs, Solar System History, Earth History, Harvest and Dimensional Shift, the Path of Healing and Balance, the 3 aspects of the Total Self, the Archetypal Mind, and the Tarot. Cosmology is the science of the origins and development of the universe. Cosmogony refers to the science of understanding the origins of the universe. The Ra contact addresses both in detail. In the slides that follow, I will give a brief overview of the key aspects of these frameworks. Returning to the central principle of the Law of One, all that exists is the one infinite creator. This is the source of all that is, infinite and unmanifest. This supreme entity gives rise to an infinite creation in the process of becoming manifest. The first perceivable quality of the manifestation of the one infinite creator is infinity itself. Boundless potential, unlimited power, truly endless creative capacity. The first known thing in the creation is infinity. The infinity is creation. The next phase of creation is the birth of universal awareness. The Creator awakens to its own infinite capacity. This can also be understood as the genesis of free will, which is the prime motivating force that compels the unmanifest Creator to manifest creation in order to know itself. Infinity became aware. This was the next step. Upon the dawning of infinite awareness, self-harnessing its own free will, the prime manifestation of the one infinite Creator coalesces into what Ra refers to as the Logos, which is synonymous with love. Awareness led to the focus of infinity into infinite energy. You have called this by various words, the most common being Logos, or love. The Creator is the focusing of infinity into an aware or conscious principle we call intelligent infinity. Here, in order to flesh out this concept of the Logos, I'd like to reconstruct the famous first chapter of the Gospel of John from the Bible, replacing the word "word" with the original Greek term Logos. In the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God. It was with God in the beginning. Through it all things were made. Without it nothing was made that has been made. In it was life, and that life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not overcome it. This concept of the Logos is an important one, central to an understanding of the primary pattern of creation at all scales, as depicted in the Law of One. The Logos can be thought of as the cosmic mind or supreme personality. Imbued with the infinite power of the Creator, free to create in any way it chooses in order to generate the experience of self-awareness and self-knowing. With this newly formed focalization of awareness and infinite capacity, imbued with free will, the Logos conceives of any number of possibilities for its creation. The next step is an infinite reaction to the creative principle following the Law of One in one of its primal distortions, freedom of will. Thus many, many dimensions, infinite in number, are possible. The energy moves from the intelligent infinity due first to the outpouring of randomized creative force, this then creating patterns, which, in holographic style, appear as the entire creation, no matter which direction or energy is explored. These patterns of energy begin, then, to regularize their own, shall we say, rhythms and fields of energy, thus creating dimensions and universes. The concept of the Logos, or logoi in plural, is fundamental. The Logos is the prime locus of awareness and intention in the creation. The Logos centers any complex or coherent system of identity for the purpose of exploring free will and the urge to manifest self-understanding of the Creator in its infinite capacity. A primary faculty of the Logos is its tendency to branch in fractal patterns, creating ever more complex and varied pathways for consciousness to explore creation and approximate infinite potential. The branches or iterations of the Logos produce sublogoi. Each sublogos represents a refinement of the exploration or theme of its parent, branching from galactic being to solar being to planetary being to individual entities down to the level of each and every unit of conscious awareness. Paradoxically, the unified nature of the one infinite Creator remains present and undiminished within each logoic manifestation, and indeed within every speck or iota of the manifest universe. Distortion is a key term that Ra uses often in discussing the Law of One, and it is important to distinguish their meaning from the common or colloquial meaning we are accustomed to hearing. Ra's usage of the word distortion is specific and technical, rather than qualitative. In other words, when Ra refers to something as a distortion, it is not a judgment or in any way suggesting a negative connotation. It is simply reminding us of the unitary nature of creation, and that anything seen to be other than unified can be understood as a distortion. It is a reminder that the relative view that produces the perception of separation may be seen as a limited perception. We can think of distortion as this technical definition: the alteration of the original shape of an object image, sound, or waveform. In this case, the original thing is oneness. As the universe unfolds, there appear manifold expressions of created forms, infinite in fact. Yet paradoxically, these infinite forms nest inseparably within the fractal cosmic framework of a unified whole. The first distortion, free will, finds focus. This is the second distortion known to you as logos, the creative principle, or love. This intelligent energy thus creates a distortion known as light. From these three distortions come many, many hierarchies of distortions, each having its own paradoxes to be synthesized, no one being more important than another. So to summarize, the first three distortions are a description of the creational pattern of the universe, from infinite unmanifest to infinite manifest, or from infinite potential to infinite kinetic. These distortions are free will as the first step, logos or love as the second step, and light as the third step. A key term related to distortion is illusion. Illusion refers to the purposeful, though similarly paradoxical phenomenon of forms seeming to exist independent of one another. This is the illusion of separation, most distinctly felt under the veil of third density spacetime, our current so-called physical reality. The value of developing awareness of the illusory nature of our current experience, as that we can begin to open to a deeper relationship to the mystery that is the spiritual journey. We can expand our perceptual capacities to include intuition and the subtle senses that lie beyond the five physical senses. Most importantly, we can cultivate the inner will to explore truth even when it leads beyond the boundaries of consensus reality. Interestingly, the very first and very last statements given by Ra, Sessions 1 and Sessions 106, offer insight and reminder into the illusory nature of manifest reality. You are not part of a material universe. You are part of a thought. You are dancing in a ballroom in which there is no material. You are dancing thoughts. You move your body, your mind, and your spirit in somewhat eccentric patterns, for you have not completely grasped the concept that you are part of the original thought. And another quote. We suggest the nature of all manifestation to be illusory and functional only insofar as the entity turns from shape and shadow to the one. The primary universal pattern expressed in both the macrocosm of universes and the microcosm of beings is that of the octave and its fractally nested densities. The octave refers to a complete system of evolutionary potentials, encoded into the very framework of every galaxy, as well as the energetic system of every involving entity. It is comprised of 7 discrete thresholds of energetic vibration, each of which serve as boundaries for different stations of learning on the soul's journey from oneness, through the experience of individuation, coalescing in ever more complete and whole awareness of the self and creation, returning to conscious unity at the culmination of the completion of the octave. To develop a working comprehension of this pattern, we have 2 useful analogies we can call upon: visible light and the musical octave. The white light from the sun, for example, when shown through a prism, splits into the 7 colors of the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, also expressed as Rojibiv in this well-known mnemonic device. For our musical analogy, Ra offers this statement. The term density is what you would call mathematical one. The closest analogy is that of music, whereby after 7 notes on your Western type of scale, if you will, the 8th note begins a new octave. Within your great octave of existence, which we share with you, there are 7 octaves or densities. Within each density, there are 7 subdensities. Within each subdensity, 7 sub-subdensities, and so on, infinitely. As we discover in this following quote, this pattern, this evolutionary path, is truly universal. Don asks, and then the law of one is truly universal in creating the progression towards the 8th density or octave in all galaxies? Is this correct? I am Ra. This is correct. There are infinite forms, infinite understandings, but the progression is one. Now we'll look at each density of the octave that we exist within to explore their primary qualities and conditions. The first density, signified by the color red, is the density of awareness or consciousness. It is comprised of the four elements: earth, water, fire, and air. The primary lesson of this density is striving for growth. This density requires approximately 2 billion years to unfold. Light comes to form the darkness, according to the co-creator's patterns or vibratory rhythms, so constructing a certain type of experience. This begins with first density, which is the density of consciousness. The mineral and water life upon the planet, learning from fire and wind the awareness of being. This is the first density. So imagine a planet preparing to host biological life. The period of its evolution where the planetary sphere is coalescing, being shaped, settling into a stable form with continents, oceans, and bodies of water, and an atmosphere that marks the maturing of the living body of this planetary entity. This is the cultivation of the literal ground upon which subsequent evolutionary processes will unfold. The second density, signified by the color orange, is the density of growth and movement. It is comprised of plant and animal life forms. These life forms can be understood as expressing mind-body complexes, not yet possessing the spirit complex. We'll cover the concept of mind-body-spirit complex later. The primary lesson of this density is striving for light and awareness. Second density is approximately 4.6 billion years in duration. This is the longest duration of any of the densities. The second density is the density of the higher plant life and animal life, which exists without the upward drive towards the infinite. The third density, signified by the color yellow, is the density of self-awareness. This is the threshold on the evolutionary journey where entities become able to conceive of themselves as distinct and independent. One significant implication of this capacity is the ability of an entity to contemplate their own mortality, their origins and destiny, their purpose and role in the creation. This is the density of human life. It is the station we have been cycling in for the past 75,000 years, which is the duration of the third density. The primary lesson of the third density is the striving for choice of polarity. Do we prefer the ways of the positive path, or service to others? Or do we prefer the negative path, or service to self? A significant dynamic at play that is unique to third density incarnate experience is the presence of what is known as the veil of forgetting. We'll explore this concept more deeply later. Earth humanity is now poised upon the turning point from third to fourth density. The planetary energies are fully established in fourth density energetics. However, the human collective remains ensconced in third density energetics due to a variety of factors. Namely, we have not unified our collective will around choosing an evolutionary path forward. The space-time of your solar system has enabled this planetary sphere to spiral into space-time of a different vibrational configuration. This causes the planetary sphere to be able to be molded by these new distortions. However, the thought forms of your people during this transition period are such that the mind-body-spirit complexes of both individual and societies are scattered throughout the spectrum instead of becoming able to grasp the needle, shall we say, and point the compass in one direction. The fourth density, signified by the color green, is the density of love or understanding. The lessons of this density pertain to striving towards wisdom or light. It is during this cycle that a planetary collective undergoes the process of forming what is known as the social memory complex, or unified planetary collective. The average lifespan of entities in fourth density is 90,000 years, and the duration of the fourth density cycle is approximately 30 million years. Fourth density is a plane of a type of bipedal vehicle which is much denser and more full of life. It is a plane wherein one is aware of the thoughts of other selves. It is a plane where one is aware of the vibration of other selves. It is a plane of compassion and understanding of the sorrows of third density. It is a plane striving towards wisdom or light. It is a plane wherein individual differences are pronounced, although automatically harmonized by group consensus. The fifth density, signified by the color blue, is the density of light or wisdom. The lessons of this density are those of striving for balance and wholeness. Where the fourth density can be understood as being highly socially oriented, in contrast, Fifth density contains much solitary activity, the lessons being inward in nature and requiring much reflection and contemplation. This density also marks a distinct transition to a primarily energetic or light-based reality. Entities here do have or can materialize a physical body, but even these bodies would be much more subtle, more delicate, more dense with energy and light than we currently experience. The fifth density harvest is of those whose vibratory distortions consciously accept the honor/duty of the law of one. This responsibility/honor is the foundation of this vibration. The sixth density, signified by the color indigo, is the density of unity. This is Ra's home density. They are relatively close to the seventh density harvest, having traversed the vast majority of the 75 million year journey that makes up this density's duration. The lessons of this density entail an ever-increasing perfection of the balancing of love with wisdom, which is the path towards allness or oneness. Sixth density is where the aspect of ourselves we call the higher self resides. The seventh density, signified by the color violet, is known as the gateway cycle, being the final density of the octave. It is the most subtle, the most spiritually dense realm of the manifest creation. Seventh density is home to the mind-body-spirit complex totality, which is the aspect of ourselves where all experience and all possibility that exists for us within the entire journey of the octave is crystallized. At mid-seventh density, Ra tells us that the entities turn their focus away from the creation as they complete the reunion with infinity, dissolving any remaining traces of separate identity and becoming one with the Creator once again. The seventh density is a density of completion and the turning towards timelessness or foreverness. The eighth density marks the culmination of all experience of the galactic journey. All portions of the Logos coalesce at this grand station, accumulating all that was learned and experienced. Just as this marks the completion of one cycle, so too is it the beginning of another grand cycle of a new octave, built upon all that was learned and crystallized in the totality of experience of the previous one. The eighth density is both Omega and Alpha, the spiritual mass of the infinite universes becoming one central sun or creator once again. Then is born a new universe, a new infinity, a new Logos, which incorporates all that the Creator has experienced of itself. Another way to think about the journey through the octave is the process of soul evolution. We are embedded within an intelligent design, containing the opportunities for an infinite variety of experiences, all of which are available to us in order to allow for a greater and greater recognition of our true infinite and eternal self. This gradual process is the pathway of soul evolution. We are agents of an infinite awareness, serving the Creator by experiencing a unique journey through this octave of creation. Our journey is complete when we integrate complete acceptance and understanding of our cosmic self, unified with intelligent infinity or the Creator. One unique and very significant aspect of third density is what is known as the veil of forgetting. When third density entities incarnate, we forget or occlude our conscious awareness from the larger portion of ourselves that exists outside the limitations of perception of physical 3D life. We forget our past lives, as well as all the greater knowledge that exists in the deeper roots of mind, known as the subconscious. This veil is unique to third density, not existing in higher densities. The conditions created by this veil necessitate an increased cultivation of personal will in order to progress beyond this station. The incarnation pattern of the beginning third density mind-body-spirit complex begins in darkness. For you may think or consider of your density as one of, as you may say, a sleep and a forgetting. This is the only plane of forgetting. It is necessary for the third density entity to forget, so that the mechanisms of confusion or free will may operate upon the newly individuated consciousness complex. The raw material refers to two distinct yet reciprocal stages of experiential potential: space/time and time/space. Space/time, or space-time, is the realm that is conventionally thought of as reality, namely that which can be observed, measured, and/or quantized. It is the material or physical realm. Time/space, or Time-space, on the other hand, can be understood as the metaphysical or invisible realm. Wherein space-time contains boundless dimensions of space, with a limited experience of time, time-space is just the opposite, containing boundless dimensions of time, with a limited experience of space. Time-space may be the realms where we travel when we dream, and the location our awareness occupies between lifetimes or incarnations. Don asks, could you tell me the difference between space-time and time-space? I am Ra. Using your words, the difference is that between the visible and invisible, or the physical and metaphysical. Using mathematical terms, as does the one you call Larson, the difference is that between s divided by t, space divided by time, and t divided by s, time divided by space. In order to create the optimal conditions for new experiences for souls to learn about infinity, it is necessary to have polarity, or duality, in order to set up opposing poles of potential. The greater the difference in potential, the greater the ability for work to be achieved in terms of spiritual growth. Without the darkness, light could not know itself. Without the possibility for confusion, there could be no impulse to strive for greater love, compassion, and understanding. Thus, the positive and negative paths for souls to choose between were developed. This is one of the greatest mysteries humankind has grappled with through the ages, the nature of good and evil, the paradox of a loving creator and a benevolent universe juxtaposed against the appearance of so much suffering, strife, and darkness. The Law of One offers a simple yet profound insight into polarity and the two paths. All experience is in service to the one creator. With the existence of both positive and negative pathways for soul evolution, the intensity, novelty, and vividness of total available experience becomes exponentially increased, thus amplifying the potentials for the infinite being to enjoy and learn from an infinite variety of experience. Finally, the greater the polarity that exists between positive and negative potentials, the more accelerated the processes of soul evolution are able to work upon entities engaged in the journey. The Law of One blinks neither at the light or the darkness, but is available for service to others and service to self. It should be noted, carefully pondered, and accepted that the Law of One is available to any social memory complex which has decided to strive together for any seeking of purpose, be it service to others or service to self. The laws, which are the primal distortions of the Law of One, then are placed into operation, and the illusion of space-time is used as a medium for the development of the results of those choices freely made. Thus all entities learn, no matter what they seek. All learn the same, some rapidly, some slowly. During the cycle of fourth density, a planetary collective undergoes the process of forming what is known as the social memory complex. This can be understood as becoming a planetary self. The minds of each individual mind-body-spirit complex within the collective becomes transparent to the collective. Its experiences, perceptions, and perspectives become available for the consideration of all. As this process culminates, a theme, direction, and purpose emerge that represents the collective preference and will of the entire planetary being. This choice then leads to further experience in the broader context of the galaxy and cosmos. Ra is a member of a positively oriented confederation of spacefaring, higher-density social memory complexes, known as the Confederation of Planets, in service of the Infinite Creator. This confederation is comprised of 53 civilizations, spanning 500 planetary systems, from 7 different star systems local to our own. The purpose of the Confederation is to assist individuals, social complexes, and planets seeking aid congruent with the Law of One, while also maintaining appropriate non-infringement of free will. In Session 6, Ra describes their affiliation with this confederation. I am one of the members of the Confederation of Planets in service of the Infinite Creator. There are approximately 53 civilizations, comprising approximately 500 planetary consciousness complexes in this confederation. This confederation contains those from your own planet who have attained dimensions beyond your third. It contains planetary entities within your solar system, and it contains planetary entities from other galaxies. It is a true confederation in that its members are not alike, but allied in service according to the Law of One. The Confederation is guided by a council of highly evolved beings known as the Council of Saturn. The council operates by means of what you would call telepathic contact with the oneness or unity of the Nine, the distortions blending harmoniously so that the law of one prevails with ease. When a need for thought is present, the council retains the distortion complex of this need, balancing it as described, and then recommends what it considers as appropriate action. This includes 1. The duty of admitting social memory complexes to the Confederation. 2. Offering aid to those who are unsure how to aid the social memory complex, requesting aid in a way consonant with both the call, the law, and the number of those calling. That is to say, sometimes the resistance of the call. 3. Internal questions in the Council are determined. The Orion Group is a federation of negatively oriented social memory complexes. They are so named due to the origins of the higher-ranking members of this group being from the Orion constellation. The Orion Group is somewhat of an adversary to the Confederation. Their goal is the enslavement of planetary systems and the creation of an empire where the elite dominate and rule over those considered less powerful. Their members hail from 3rd to 6th density, with the vast majority comprised of 4th and 5th density. The Orion Group faces much difficulty in maintaining its numbers due to constant struggles caused by internal power conflicts, as well as the difficulties caused by their adherence to a concept of separation. The number of members in the Orion Group are approximately 1/10 that of the Confederation. Here's a statement by Ra in response to Don's question regarding their purpose. The intention is to presumably unify by choosing the distortion complex called elite from a social memory complex, and then enslaving, by various effects, those who are seen as the distortion of not elite. There is then the concept of taking the social memory complex thus weeded and adding it to a distortion thought of by the so-called Orion Group as an empire. Wanderers are those souls native to other planetary and/or star systems who travel to and incarnate upon Earth in order to assist in its evolution. They come from the 4th, 5th, and mostly 6th densities. There may be upward of 100 million wanderers presently incarnate on Earth. Wanderers have already completed the lessons that members of our planetary collective are still working on. They bring a higher vibrational set point, helping to raise the vibration and to assist the planet as it undergoes ascension or dimensional shift. A quote from Session 12. When a social memory complex has achieved its complete understanding of its desire, it may conclude that its desire is service to others with a distortion towards reaching their hand, figuratively, to any entities who call for aid. These entities, whom you may call the brothers and sisters of sorrow, move toward this calling of sorrow. These entities are from all reaches of the infinite creation, and are bound together by the desire to serve in this distortion. The UFO phenomenon is one of the most controversial and polarized topics in the social sphere. It also happens to be central to many areas of study and investigation regarding so-called paranormal, alternative, occult, and esoteric knowledge. Ra shares extensively on the nature of ET visitation, as well as the intentions and purposes that have been at play. Many different beings, from both paths, are involved in these phenomena. Both open-mindedness and careful discernment are encouraged to the truth seeker. UFO sightings may be physical craft of off-planet origin, physical craft built here in secret programs, or thought-form craft projected by either positive or negative entities. We'll now briefly review some of the major themes and topics covered in the Law of One regarding the history of our solar system, and how these events have shaped and informed the conditions we experience on Earth today. The originating spiritual being of our Milky Way galaxy, our Logos, has set up the prime conditions or cosmic themes for this galaxy. These are what all beings within this galaxy experience as natural laws, both physical and metaphysical. Within this framework of natural laws, our solar Logos, the spiritual being centering our solar system, further refines the themes of the galactic Logos. This sets up our local conditions which all planets in our solar system experience. The sub-logos of your solar entity differentiated some experiential components within the patterns of intelligent energy set in motion by the Logos, which created the basic conditions and vibratory rates consistent throughout your, what you have called, major galaxy. Let's briefly review some of the major historical events within our solar system that affect our current experience on Earth. Venus, the planet from which Ra originates, experienced its third density cycle approximately 2.6 billion years ago. Though no longer conducive to supporting third density life forms, it is currently conducive to fifth and sixth density growth, learning, and teaching. This planetary sphere was one of rapid evolution. It is our native Earth, and the rapidity of the progress of the mind-body-spirit complexes upon its surface was due to harmonious interaction. Mars also hosted biological life into a third density cycle. Approximately concurrent to the beginning of Earth's third density cycle, 75,000 years ago, activities of warfare caused planetary conditions no longer capable of supporting life, as its atmosphere was destroyed. The Mars souls were transferred to Earth, then newly cycling in third density, where they continued their incarnational journeying. At that time, this group of transferred souls made up approximately 1/2 of the human population of Earth. Upon the entity known to you as Mars, this entity was stopped in mid-third density, thus being unable to continue in progression due to the lack of hospitable conditions upon the surface. This planet shall be undergoing healing for some of your space-time millennia. What we observe as the asteroid belt that exists between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter is the remains of a planet known as Maldek, which was destroyed in a great cataclysm during its third density cycle due to intense warring of its civilizations. The souls of this destroyed planet were transferred to Earth to continue their evolution and incarnation cycles. At one time-space, in what is your past, there was a population of third density beings upon a planet which dwelt within your solar system. There are various names by which this planet has been named. The vibratory sound complex most usually used by your peoples is Maldek. Saturn is home to a council of highly advanced beings who guard planet Earth and attend to the affairs of our local portion of the galaxy. Ra refers to this group as the Council of Saturn. The planet known as Saturn has a great affinity for the infinite intelligence, and thus it has been dwelled upon in its magnetic fields of time-space by those who wish to protect your system. Uranus is currently in first density and has the potential to develop biological life and progress through the octave of evolutionary experience. The planetary entity known to you as Uranus is slowly moving through the first density and has the potential of moving through all densities. Through the course of the Q&A between Don and Ra, we learn of several key historical events, dynamics, and ancient civilizations that fall squarely outside the standard history of our planet that is taught in schools and mainstream currents of thought. These include the extraterrestrial origins of humanity, some major milestones from Earth's third density cycle, the dimensional shift that is currently underway, forgotten civilizations and their technological and spiritual developments, ancient Egypt and the Great Pyramids, alternative accounts of the Abrahamic peoples and their religious origins, the life of Jesus, wanderers or the brothers and sisters of sorrow, the cosmic implications of nuclear armament, and hidden currents in geopolitics and the military-industrial complex. Next, we'll explore some of these topics and their significance. At the onset of Earth's third density cycle, the human population was comprised of a majority of souls not native to this planet. According to Ra, there were 3 primary soul groups that made up the human population 75,000 years ago. The largest group were the Mars souls who were transferred to Earth after their planet was no longer able to support life. This group made up half of the population. Another quarter of the population was made up of native Earth souls successfully harvesting from second density. These would be those naturally evolving from advanced apes into early human. The remainder of the population were souls from other planets who didn't successfully harvest 3D to 4D, as those planets underwent that dimensional shift. Instead, they transferred here to continue the lessons of third density. There were perhaps 1/2 of the third density population being entities from the red planet, Mars, as you call it, perhaps 1/4 from second density of your planetary experience, approximately 1/4 from other sources, other planetary spheres, whose entities chose this planetary sphere for third density work. A quote from session 20. There were also a smaller number of souls present at the onset of Earth's third density who were the Maldek souls, having worked through the lessons required to evolve from the 2D bodies they inhabited when first incarnating on the planet after theirs was destroyed. Understanding this mixed origin of the souls that make up the human collective is a key insight to understanding some of the dynamics and difficulties still affecting our global civilization today. The population of your planet contains many various groups harvested from other second dimension and cycled third dimension spheres. You are not all one race or background of beginning. The experience you share is unique to this time-space continuum. The third density master cycle is said to contain 3 major cycles. These major cycles, approximately 25,000 years each, likely correspond to what is known as the precession of the equinox. At the end of each major cycle, planetary and cosmic conditions align for a phenomenon Ra calls harvest, wherein souls have the opportunity to graduate from the current planetary density to the next. One major cycle is approximately 25,000 of your years. There are 3 cycles of this nature during which those who have progressed may be harvested. At the end of 3 major cycles, that is, approximately between 75 and 76,000 of your years, all are harvested, regardless of their progress, for during that time, the planet itself has moved through the useful part of that dimension and begins to cease being useful for the lower levels of vibration within that density. Harvest is the term Ra uses to describe a universal process whereby souls graduate from one density to the next. In third density, harvest occurs at the culmination of each major cycle or apex of the precession of the equinox. A side note here, for those interested in the Mayan calendar and exploring its deeper significance, I believe there's a direct correlation between the Mayan long count calendar mapping the precession of the equinox as a great astrological cycle and the spiritual significance of the turning of this cycle as a gateway, marking the threshold between evolutionary stages of humanity. Though there are negative overtones of the concept of spiritual harvest from biblical references, where an external God casts judgment of good and evil, the process of harvest that Ra describes is humanistic and self-determined. Furthermore, all souls will eventually complete the journey of the octave, graduating density through density as they learn, grow, and become more aware of their true nature. Though the timing, manner, and pace of the journey are ours to determine, governed by our own unique perspectives and choices. The Confederation has been working to aid and assist Earth humanity to achieve a successful harvest. Successful in the sense of as many souls as possible being able to take advantage of the lessons available in this vibrational illusion of third density, and polarizing sufficiently along either of the 2 paths, positive or negative, to continue the journey into fourth density as the time of harvest approaches. We learn that the threshold of polarization necessary to graduate along the positive and negative paths are different. For a positive harvest, an entity must polarize 51% service to other. This means essentially that the entity must integrate and prioritize the wellness and interests of others, of the collective self, at least as much as the entity prioritizes the interests of the individual self. For a negative harvest, on the other hand, an entity must polarize 95% service to self. This requires intense dedication to self-interest, as well as almost complete disregard for the well-being of others. Ra clarifies that though these so-called percentages may seem skewed between the positive and negative requirements for harvest, the effort required to polarize to these levels of commitment equate to the same level of overall dedication, work, and inner clarification of the soul's baseline desire for approaching the evolutionary journey. Will the experience revolve around radiating and freely sharing the love of the Creator with greater and greater realizations of unity? Or will the experience entail absorbing, contracting, and exploiting for the sole benefit of accumulating power over others? At the time of harvest, there are a host of entities who facilitate and support the process to ensure an accurate and complete process is achieved, to properly determine the appropriate outcome for each soul's subsequent vibratory cycling or density of experiencing. Here is an analogy given by Ra, describing the self-placement process of harvest. The illusion is created of light, or more properly, but less understandably, light love. This is in varying degrees of intensity. The spirit complex of each harvested entity moves along the line of light until the light grows too glaring, at which time the entity stops. Ra likens the process to ascending a staircase comprised of steps of light. Each progressive step becomes more full of radiance and truth, of infinite intelligence. The violet ray, or crown chakra, represents the crystallization of each individual's inherent understanding or attitude towards creation. Therefore, as we ascend the staircase, we will naturally establish ourselves most comfortably along the step that resonates in correspondence to our violet ray expression. Another quote from Ra illustrates this further. The harvest is automatic in that those harvested will respond according to that which is unchangeable during harvest, that is, the violet ray emanation. However, these helpers are around to ensure a proper harvesting so that each entity may have the fullest opportunity to express its violet ray selfhood. The planetary sphere experiences its own evolutionary journey through creation, ascending the densities of the octave. The shift from one density, or core vibrational frequency, to the next is marked by a spiritual event of great significance. This is a time of harvest for all those incarnating on the planet. Additionally, the planet itself will ascend from one density to the next. The energetic matrix will increase in core vibrational harmonics, thereby potentiating a new level of experience with higher orders of spiritual growth and primary soul lessons. The Earth is currently undergoing this process. Many indigenous cultures and spiritual traditions have prophesied this event. And in modern times, there are a variety of interpretations about both what it means and how exactly the process will unfold. Some have, and still predict, some relatively instantaneous event that will unfold in the blink of an eye. Others subscribe to a process that will unfold over a period of time, gradually transitioning from one era to the next. Ra offers an insight that seems to suggest that Earth's transition from third to fourth density can be understood both as brief and gradual. From a cosmological perspective, the time frame of this transition is very brief, occurring over a period of several generations. On a grand scale, relative to the evolution of the galaxy, this would be seen as the blink of an eye. Though, as we experience this generations-long transition, dimensional shift will be experienced as gradual, or even slow, to those anticipating the energies and conditions that will be potentiated as the next density is fully established. Furthermore, this process of shifting from third to fourth density, and how it is experienced on the ground, is largely a factor of the decisions and choices made by each and every soul incarnating and taking part in the earthly experience throughout the duration of this transition. The more the collective or social complex unifies its will and expresses coherence in its vision for evolutionary continuance, the quicker, more harmonious, and more seamless the process of dimensional shift will be. As may be obvious to those observing planetary conditions and collective behavior at this time, it can be inferred that Earth humanity is not finding an easy time of unifying our collective will. Therefore, our experience of dimensional shift may be both varied and somewhat turbulent. The fourth density is, as we have said, as regularized in its approach as the striking of a clock upon the hour. The space-time of your solar system has enabled this planetary sphere to spiral into space-time of a different vibrational configuration. This causes the planetary sphere to be able to be molded by these new distortions. At the onset of Earth's third density cycle, the average lifespan expectancy for human beings was 900 years. While this lifespan may seem unbelievable, there is striking corroboration to this idea in both the Bible and ancient Sumerian records, such as the Sumerian King List. Shown here is a table of the biblical patriarchs and their corresponding lifespans and verse references. According to Ra, a 900-year lifespan is optimal for making best use of the catalyst and lessons available in third density. What we consider a normal modern lifespan of 70 to 90 years would ideally be used simply to gain a firm and comprehensive understanding of the reality we inhabit. This is due in part to the fact that we forget everything we know from a higher perspective upon incarnating. So it takes a while to get properly oriented to the life, the planetary context, and the lessons appropriate to those conditions and the soul's evolution. Here's a quote from Session 20. The mind-body-spirit complex of third density has perhaps 100 times as intensive a program of catalytic action from which to distill distortions and learn teachings than any other of the densities. Thus, the learned teachings are most confusing to the mind-body-spirit complex, which is, shall we say, inundated by the ocean of experience. During the first, shall we say, perhaps 150 to 200 of your years as you measure time, a mind-body-spirit complex is going through the process of a spiritual childhood. The mind and the body, not enough in a disciplined configuration to lend clarity to the spiritual influxes. Thus, the remaining time span is given to optimize the understandings which result from the experience itself. The reasons for this significant decline in lifespan has to do primarily with the fact that most Earth humans were not taking advantage of the opportunities of catalyst that were available to them. Secondarily, the increasingly disharmonious interactions between societies and individuals through the progressions of third density also contributed to a marked shortening of lifespan. Another quote from Session 20. The lessening of the lifespan was due primarily to the lack of the building up of positive orientation. When there is no progress, those conditions which grant progress are gradually lost. This is one of the difficulties of remaining unpolarized. The chances, shall we say, of progress become steadily less. Though not acknowledged by conventional history or academia, the ancient civilizations we are aware of were long preceded by earlier civilizations, some of which are well known in alternative or esoteric studies. Mu, otherwise known as Lemuria, was at its ascendancy at the turning of the first of the second major cycle, approximately 53,000 years ago. Its landmass was subsumed into the ocean as a consequence of natural tectonic activity. Its inhabitants were part of a soul group originating from the Deneb star system, located in the constellation Cygnus. Ra states, "They were beings of a somewhat primitive nature, but those who had very advanced spiritual distortions. Their ancestors migrated to areas of Russia, North America, and South America. The Native Americans were descendants from this deeply ancient civilization. The civilization of Atlantis developed approximately 31,000 years ago and ended about 11,000 years ago in a great cataclysm caused by war and a misuse of certain advanced technologies." Here's a quote. "The Atlantean race was a very conglomerate social complex, which began to form approximately 31,000 years in the past. It was a slow-growing and very agrarian society until approximately 15,000 years ago. It reached quickly a high technological understanding, which caused it to be able to use intelligent infinity in a less informative manner. We may add that they used intelligent energy as well, manipulating greatly the natural influxes of the indigo or pineal ray from divine or infinite energy. Thus, they were able to create life forms. This they began to do instead of healing and perfecting their own mind-body-spirit complexes, turning their distortions towards what you may call the negative. Approximately 11,000 of your years ago, the first of the what you call wars caused approximately 40% of this population to leave the density by means of disintegration of the body. The second and most devastating of the conflicts occurred approximately 10,821 years in the past. This created an earth-changing configuration, and the large part of Atlantis was no more, having been inundated. 3 of the positively oriented of the Atlantean groups left this geographical locus before that devastation, placing themselves in the mountainous areas of what you call Tibet, what you call Peru, and what you call Turkey. Ra cultivated a direct relationship with the people of ancient Egypt. They had been searching the cultures and civilizations of Earth to discover if there were any whose inclinations of seeking were compatible with the teachings they wished to offer, that being the Law of One. 18,000 years ago, Ra visited the skies over Egypt in a bell-shaped, crystal-powered craft, but did not land at that time, due to their assessment that the attitudes within the social and religious orders at that time were contradictory and lacked sufficient unity of will and desire regarding what Ra was intending to offer. Then, approximately 11,000 years ago, Ra returned to Egypt, this time choosing to land and walk among the people. Though they soon discovered that their attempts to teach and offer aid were misunderstood and met with confusion due to their physical appearance and manner of being. So, Ra departed again. They returned again 8,500 years ago, this time with a plan to construct pyramids for the purpose of creating appropriate spaces for healing and spiritual initiation. For 2,500 years, they focused and perfected their plan for the design of the Great Pyramid. Then, approximately 6,000 years ago, through what we would consider a tremendous miracle, they created the first pyramid by direct manifestation. Subsequently, over the next 1,500 years, they created the other pyramids using local or earthly material. Finally, approximately 3,500 years ago, they contacted the 18th dynasty pharaoh Akhenaten via telepathic contact. The Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten brought about great revolutions within the religious, political, and artistic systems of the time of his reign in the 18th dynasty, approximately 3,350 years ago. Central to this revolution was the proclamation of the existence of one unified, all-encompassing creator, represented by the sun disk, or Aten, as a proxy for a single spiritual source of all creation. Akhenaten dismantled the existing polytheistic religious systems, as well as the priesthoods and cults of power derived from a cosmology based on a hierarchy of many gods, each with their own dominion and sphere of influence. Ra was able to establish telepathic contact with Akhenaten due to his inherent affinity with the Law of One. Here is a quote from Ra on their contact with Akhenaten. Information concerning initiation and healing by crystal was being given. The one known as Akhenaten was able to perceive this information without significant distortion, and for a time moved heaven and earth in order to invoke the Law of One, and to order the priesthood of these structures in accordance with the distortions of initiation and true compassionate healing. This was not to be long-lasting. Through the Ra contact, we learn of an entity known as Yahweh, in a way that brings new and profound insight into certain historical and religious depictions of God. According to Ra, Yahweh is a positive member of the Confederation of planets in service to the infinite creator. When the Mars catastrophe occurred, and the planet was no longer able to support life, it was this social memory complex known as Yahweh who proposed a plan to the Council of Saturn to collect the Mars souls and transfer them to Earth, after performing some form of genetic cloning to provide the Mars beings with suitable Earth bodies, as well as to condition these new bodies for accelerated spiritual growth. Therefore, we can see that the bodies of these transferred Mars entities were literally made in the image of Yahweh, genetically speaking. Yahweh's proposed plan was approved by the Council, and Yahweh undertook this work out of a desire to assist these entities in the continuation of their evolutionary journey and the lessons of third density. Yahweh was no doubt now invested in the fate of these beings, who, as we have learned, were one of several different soul groups now inhabiting and incarnating on Earth. Fast forward to the times of the ancient Israelites. Telepathic and genetic linkage had allowed Yahweh to inculcate positive philosophy to the prophets and priests of his tribe. But the genetic differences experienced by those in this tribal lineage also created a disposition of thinking of themselves as different and special with regards to other people and nations. This distortion was taken advantage of by those of the Orion Group, and the telepathic link to Yahweh was slowly infiltrated. This led to a situation where the Israelites and tribes of Abraham were given negative philosophy guised as spiritual laws and covenants. Much of the Old Testament of the Bible is a remnant of this contact with both Yahweh and the Orion false Yahweh. To further muddy the waters, the Confederation Yahweh saw this corruption taking place and the relative success of the Orion campaign that was causing such inroads for negative philosophy to impact the thoughts and behavior of his tribe. In order to attempt to combat or push back against this trend, they initiated another round of genetic manipulation, this time in the form of direct sexual reproduction with the Earth entities, thus creating a new generation of larger, stronger humans, which are known as the Anak. Their hope was to create a new line of beings more capable of grasping the Law of One. But these efforts were grossly distorted, leading instead to an ongoing series of holy wars fought over supremacy of gods and the rights of the so-called chosen people. The effects of the distortions produced in these chapters of history continue to ripple throughout our world, continuing to serve as a source of conflict, confusion, and strife. To this day, many religious individuals and groups pray with deep and authentic devotion to Yahweh, with the belief that they are communicating with the one true God. Though if we are to take in what Ra teaches, this great being is, instead, an evolving social memory complex. Though it may be deeply unpopular among people of the Christian faith, especially those of a more fundamentalist or orthodox view of their religion, we learn from Ra that Jesus was a wandering member of the Confederation. The soul of the entity we know as Jesus of Nazareth was from an unnamed social memory complex of late 4th density. Originally named Yehoshua, Jesus incarnated on Earth in order to assist humanity in the lessons of unconditional love, as well as to perfect his own understanding of his attitude of self towards other self. He became aware at an early age of his capabilities and dedicated himself to perfecting his ability to teach, help, and serve. He was extremely positively polarized and remembered more than most wanderers do of his mission, purpose, and relationship to the oneness of the Creator. Through his efforts and profound dedication to service to others, he was able to graduate 4th density and now resides in 5th density and studies the lessons of wisdom. Throughout the span of the 3rd density master cycle, we learn that there have been relatively few entities who have successfully harvested to the next density. And of those graduates, only a tiny fraction were of the negative path. 3 specific examples of those who were able to perfect their dedication to the negative or service to self path were Genghis Khan, leader of the Mughal Empire in the late 12th and early 13th century, Grigory Rasputin, mystic and advisor to the Russian Tsar in the early 20th century, and Taras Bulba, a 16th or 17th century Ukrainian Cossack commander. Throughout human history, there have been instances of Confederation entities giving aid in the form of telepathic contact or channeling communication to people and groups of different eras. This contact is one of the primary ways the Confederation has offered forms of service to assist our evolution. However, when the information given is of a technological nature, there have been significant distortions and misuses of the information by those seeking power or control over others. 2 such modern examples involving Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla produced profoundly negative results. Tesla, who was an extremely positively oriented wanderer, devoted his life to developing technologies and new insights in science and physics that would lighten the burden of humanity. He was aided in this mission by telepathic communication with Confederation members. Certain of his discoveries, however, were used to produce the technology that enabled the Philadelphia experiment, dealing with electromagnetic cloaking and material teleportation. These technologies were taken into the military-industrial complex and perverted towards the negative aims of war and military dominance. Albert Einstein, also a wanderer, was able to penetrate certain mysteries surrounding the interrelationship between energy, light, and matter. He was aided in the development of his theories and understandings via inner contact with positively motivated Confederation entities. Side note on telepathic contact: someone being contacted through telepathic channels, either by positive or negative sources, may not be consciously aware of this contact. Ideas, images, or other impressions may be experienced by the contactee, who may simply perceive these impressions as streams of consciousness within their normal or localized thought processes. The equations and theories Einstein articulated were foundational to the development of atomic sciences and nuclear technologies. These understandings were then absorbed by the military-industrial complex, where they laid the groundwork for the Manhattan Project, which produced the first nuclear weapons of the modern era. Once these weapons were detonated, first in secret test locations, and soon afterward on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the Confederation felt a strong desire to increase their efforts to be of service and help balance the distortions caused by the gross abuses and misuses of weaponized power that in some ways came through earlier efforts on their part to provide information and aid to Earth humanity. After crossing the nuclear threshold, there was a marked uptick in UFO sightings amongst the general population, as well as an increase in reports of telepathic contact with extraterrestrial or higher density beings. These sightings and contacts were designed to stimulate a broader seeking amongst humanity towards those paranormal phenomena that inculcate a reverence and awe for the deeper mysteries of the universe. This seeking, it is thought, may catalyze spiritual insights and accelerate the evolution of individual and collective consciousness necessary to avoid the more dire consequences that the age of nuclear technology attends. Through several exchanges regarding topics that Ra refers to as transient material, we learn of the existence of technological capabilities within the control of the military-industrial complex, so-called national security and intelligence services, and secret government programs. These technologies include various flying craft we would consider UFOs, as well as advanced weaponry and destructive technologies including psychotronic weapons, particle beam weapons, weather modification technologies, and technologies capable of altering the vibrational patterns of the planetary sphere. Here's a quote from Ra. "Your peoples have, at this time, the technological achievement, if you would call it that, of being able to create and fly the shapes and type of craft known to you as unidentified flying objects. Unfortunately for the social memory complex vibratory rate of your peoples, these devices are not intended for the service of mankind, but for potential destructive use. Additionally, we learn of secret bases and military installations, both here on Earth as well as on the Moon. The sum total of these classified and undisclosed technologies would be sufficient to utterly transform the conditions of the planet and all of its inhabitants. But those in control of the secret networks and unacknowledged syndicates of power maintain absolute secrecy in order to further consolidate their power and ensure maximum strategic advantage over any who would challenge their right to dominance and absolute control over geopolitical currents and global affairs." Another quote from Ra. "The technology your peoples possess at this time is capable of resolving each and every limitation which plagues your social memory complex at this present nexus of experience. However, the concerns of some of your beings, with distortions towards what you would call powerful energy, cause these solutions to be withheld until the solutions are so needed that those with the distortion can then become further distorted in the direction of power." Now that Earth is undergoing harvest or dimensional shift from third to fourth density, many interstellar races and higher density beings are present at this time to witness, assist, or otherwise take part in this significant cosmic event. Though not officially validated by the Law of One or the LL Research Group, there are accounts of some of these extraterrestrial visitors and guardians that have recently come through secret space program whistleblower Corey Goode. He tells of his involvement in off-planet missions and secret space program activity during a 20-year tour, as well as his current role as spokesperson or delegate for a highly evolved race of beings called the Blue Avians, that he claims may be the same collective we know as Ra, who give us the Law of One teachings. For those interested in further information on Goode's testimony, there is a series of interviews by David Wilcock, himself a Law of One scholar, on the conscious media network Gaia.com. The most personal and perhaps relevant teachings from the Law of One pertain to the path of healing and balance. Ra lays out a complete system of processes for healing appropriate to our density of experience. The system is comprised of a sequence of 3 areas of healing work. First, the mind complex, next, the body complex, and finally, the spirit complex. Ra describes these as follows. Firstly, the mind must be known to itself. This is perhaps the most demanding part of healing work. If the mind knows itself, then the most important aspect of healing has occurred, for consciousness is the microcosm of the law of one. The second part has to do with the disciplines of the body complexes. In the streamings reaching your planet at this time, these understandings and disciplines have to do with the balance between love and wisdom in the use of the body in its natural functions. The third area is the spiritual, and in this area, the first two disciplines are connected through the attainment of contact with intelligent infinity. And here's another quote. One of the primal distortions of the law of one is that of healing. Healing occurs when a mind-body-spirit complex realizes, deep within itself, the law of one. That is, that there is no disharmony, no imperfection, that all is complete and whole and perfect. Thus, the intelligent infinity within this mind-body-spirit complex reforms the illusion of body, mind, or spirit to a form congruent with the law of one. Ra states that the necessary prerequisite upon which the mental disciplines must be based is the cultivation of inner stillness or silence. The prerequisite of mental work is the ability to retain silence of self at a steady state when required by the self. The mind must be opened like a door. The key is silence. Once the capacity for inner silence is established, the great work may begin. There are 5 areas or disciplines within the process of healing the mind complex. This is entirely an inner process of self-examination and coming to know the true nature of mind. The 5 areas of mental healing are as follows. 1. Balancing the polarity of thoughts about self. 2. Accepting completeness or perfection within one's consciousness. 3. Balancing the polarity of thoughts about other selves. 4. Accepting completeness and perfection of the other selves. And finally, developing awareness of the relationship between the personal mind, the minds of others, the group or social mind, and the cosmic or infinite mind. As Ra describes it, healing the body involves coming to know the body and its functions in a whole and complete way. This includes not just the chemical complex or physical matter of the body, but also the sensations, biases, and emotions experienced in the body. Each of these must be understood in its polarized nature, then accepted and integrated. This process is repeated or applied to the bodies of other selves as well. A quote from Ra. The body is a creature of the mind's creation. It has its biases. The biological bias must be first completely understood, and then the opposite bias allowed to find full expression in understanding. Again, the process of acceptance of the body as a balanced as well as polarized individual may be accomplished. The final and most subtle aspect of the healing process involves work on the spirit complex. To engage this work in a stable and sustainable way, the mind and body must first be sufficiently balanced. Ra describes the spirit complex as a shuttle or gateway to intelligent infinity. This is the portion of ourselves which connects the finite to the infinite. All activity within the spirit complex forms the basis for the further streamings of energy and the experiences that we perceive. It is our personal linkage with Source, or the one infinite creator. Those wishing to access healing abilities in a stable and balanced fashion must sufficiently balance and heal their own spirit complex, as this opens the healer to the infinite well of undistorted love's light, or intelligent energy, that can serve in the process of healing and serving others in their path towards wholeness. In the following quote, Ra describes the healing of the spirit complex. That is the work of wind and fire. The spiritual body energy field is a pathway or channel. When body and mind are receptive and open, then the spirit can become a functioning shuttle or communicator from the entity's individual energy of will upward and from the streamings of the creative fire and wind downwards. Ra describes the mind-body-spirit complex as being comprised of a series of energy centers. There are 7 primary energy centers, known to us as the chakras in the Western esoteric traditions. The 7 chakras may be seen as a map charting the various aspects or dimensions of the complete self. Their relative state, from completely blocked to completely open, is an indication of the degree to which a person has integrated that aspect or dimension of themselves through acceptance and understanding. The contents of one's thoughts and emotions may be analyzed to discover where separation or blockages to complete love and understanding exist. These blockages may be in relation to the self, other selves, or the creation. Balancing the chakra system is key, and more important than opening any individual chakra. Ra describes a complete system of healing that revolves around the chakras. When an entity is opened, cleared, and balanced the whole system, it is possible to access and open the gateway to intelligent infinity. This opens the entity to great healing capacities and other spiritual powers available to the fully realized adept. In session 15, Ra gives a succinct description of the chakra system in response to the question, how does an individual go about balancing himself? What is the first step? Their response is so compact and integrated, I'd like to read the full text instead of attempting to paraphrase. Their answer is as follows. The steps are only one. That is, an understanding of the energy centers which make up the mind-body-spirit complex. This understanding may be briefly summarized as follows. The first balancing is of the Malkuth, or Earth, vibratory energy complex, called the red ray complex. An understanding and acceptance of this energy is fundamental. The next energy complex, which may be blocked, is the emotional or personal complex, also known as the orange ray complex. This blockage will often demonstrate itself as personal eccentricities or distortions with regard to self-conscious understanding or acceptance of self. The third blockage resembles most closely that which you have called ego. It is the yellow ray or solar plexus center. Blockages in this center will often manifest as distortions towards power manipulation and other social behaviors concerning those close and those associated with the mind-body-spirit complex. Those with blockages in these first three energy centers, or nexi, will have continuing difficulties in ability to further their seeking of the law of one. The center of heart, or green ray, is the center from which third density beings may springboard, shall we say, towards infinite intelligence. Blockages in this area may manifest as difficulties in expressing what you may call universal love or compassion. The blue ray center of energy streaming is the center which, for the first time, is outgoing as well as inpouring. Those blocked in this area may have difficulty in grasping the spirit-mind complexes of its own entity, and further difficulty in expressing such understandings of self. Entities blocked in this area may have difficulties in accepting communication from other mind-body-spirit complexes. The next center is the pineal, or indigo ray center. Those blocked in this center may experience a lessening of the influx of intelligent energy due to manifestations which appear as unworthiness. As you can see, this is but one of many distortions due to the several points of energy influx into the mind-body-spirit complex. The indigo ray balancing is quite central to the type of work which revolves about the spirit complex, which has its influx then into the transformation or transmutation of third density to fourth density, it being the energy center receiving the least distorted outpourings of love light from intelligent energy, and having also the potential for the key to the gateway of intelligent infinity. The remaining center of energy influx is simply the total expression of the entity's vibratory complex of mind, body, and spirit. It is as it will be. Balanced or imbalanced has no meaning at this energy level, for it gives and takes in its own balance. Whatever the distortion may be, it cannot be manipulated as can the others, and therefore has no particular importance in viewing the balancing of an entity. With an understanding of the chakra system, the flows and exchanges of energies that take place in sexual relationships can be understood with more depth and meaning. This creates the potential to approach sexuality and sexual practice as an opportunity for healing, service, and evolution along the spiritual path. This conscious application of spiritual seeking and sexual relationship is similar to the practices and philosophy of tantric yoga. The conscious application of one's will to unblock one's energy centers through acceptance, forgiveness, and understanding can open or unlock the potentials for energy to rise higher and higher within the energy system. The sharing of this energy with the sexual partner and the partaking of the energies shared by that partner create rich and potent opportunities for learning, growth, and service. I'll give a brief description of the experiential content relevant to each chakra in regards to sexual energy exchange, as taught by Ra. Red ray energy has to do with the reproductive system. Orange ray energy is the expression of personal power. Yellow ray energy is the expression of self in relationship to other individuals, groups, or society at large. Sexual energy transfers taking place in the orange and/or yellow ray centers would be of a negative polarization. For example, in sexual interactions where one is driven by a desire to possess or dominate another, or one is driven by a desire to be possessed or dominated, in these exchanges, the focus of experience remains bound to the gratifications of the personal desires. Green ray energy transfer occurs only as a positively polarizing sexual exchange. This transfer occurs when both participants of the exchange are unblocked in yellow and orange ray, and are able to extend complete love and acceptance one to the other, the gifts of the sexual exchange being offered freely without any expectation of return. The green ray energy exchange, both sexual and otherwise, is a turning point to higher potentials for service to others, where love of a universal or unconditional nature can be experienced and explored. Blue ray energy exchange builds upon and is only available through green ray opening. This transfer is the giving of acceptance or freedom one to another. This giving allows the recipient to experience complete acceptance and the freedom to express themselves fully in wholeness. Indigo ray transfer occurs when one has realized awareness of the Creator as self and is able to offer this realization in the sacramental act of lovemaking, where the Creator is meeting itself as Creator. When both blue and indigo centers are open, contact can be made through the violet ray with intelligent infinity. We now turn our focus to the conceptualization of the self. This involves a deep paradox, as the mere notion of self implies the notion of other, and this distinction between self and other diverges from the law of one, or universal reality of unity. Nonetheless, there are profound teachings that Ra offers in the attempt to resolve these apparent paradoxes and arrive at a more comprehensive understanding and realization of the law of one. The first core concept relating to notions of self is that of the microcosm and the macrocosm. The microcosm is the self as an apparently independent, evolving entity. At this level, there is the potential to take on a specific point of view, a finite and distinct locus of awareness that is differentiated from unconditioned intelligent infinity. The microcosmic self is experienced both within and simultaneous to the macrocosmic self, which is the cosmos, the universe, that broader context within which the microcosmic self gains experience. The microcosmic self is comprised of three distinct stations situated along the evolutionary path through the octave of experience. Though we are currently unable to perceive it, all aspects of the total self exist simultaneously in the eternal now. Ra states, "There is no history as we understand your concept. Picture, if you will, a circle of being. We know the Alpha and Omega as infinite intelligence. The circle never ceases. It is present. These three aspects of the total self are the mind-body-spirit complex, the higher self, and the mind-body-spirit complex totality." Self-awareness dawns at the onset of third density. This is the first point at which consciousness assembles all the requisite faculties to experience itself as a distinct being, capable of making choices that serve self or serve other self. This is the first station of the microcosmic self in the journey through the seven densities. Humans, or as we call ourselves, people, Ra calls mind-body-spirit complexes, due to the fact that each of us, though we are used to thinking of ourselves as discrete beings, are actually a complex of nested bodies, thought forms, and spiritual energies. We are living systems comprised of profound complexity. This complexity is organized around three primary aspects of body, mind, and spirit. The body complex refers to our physical vehicle, itself made up of countless smaller bodies of our organs and cells. These, of course, being assemblages of a vast array of intelligent forms that were developed in the previous two densities. The mind complex comprises our capacity for thought, both rational and intuitive, our faculties of perception, and our ability to encode and decode meaning. The spirit complex is the most subtle aspect of ourselves. It is that faculty which connects us to the eternal true self that is unified with the Creator. It is a complex of channels which are established between our current state of consciousness with various timeless stations of greater selfhood, each with its own role and purpose in our journey through the octave of experience. We call upon the combined faculties of our mind-body-spirit complex in order to experience, reflect, analyze, synthesize, learn from, and assimilate all the experiences we encounter through the cycles of incarnation and the progression through the densities. The second aspect, or station, of the total self is the higher self. This part of ourselves forms in mid-sixth density. We would think of this aspect as residing in our future from our current point of view. It is the version of ourselves that exists with full understanding of the experiences and lessons learned up to this point, including third, fourth, fifth, and sixth densities. This aspect of ourselves is one of the greatest allies or sources of aid we have. It can be contacted and worked with as we sort through the intricacies of the evolutionary path that we travel. By quieting our mind through meditation and mindfulness practices, we can access the wisdom available from this more advanced version of ourself. We can also work with the higher self through receiving information and communications in dreams. And between incarnations, it is our higher self that we consciously work with to design and plan for the upcoming life path and sequence of incarnative experiences for optimal growth and learning. Ra refers to this as pre-incarnative programming or future life programming. Another way of conceiving of the higher self is by imagining the knowledge and wisdom that resides in the deep roots of the subconscious mind. This part of ourselves is always with us, always available, but it requires our conscious attempts to access this deep well by bridging the gap between our current self and the higher self. Here's a quote from Ra. The higher self, that self which exists with full understanding of the accumulation of experiences of the entity, aids the entity in achieving healing of the experiences which have not been learned properly and assists in further life experience programming, as you may call it. The final station, or aspect, of the total self is the mind-body-spirit complex totality. This comes into being once the experiences required to understand the total self in infinite unity, wholeness, and completeness takes place. This marks the culmination of our evolutionary journey through the octave. And at this point, we form a sort of database or repository of all experiences encountered along the journey. This infinitely rich and complex store of experiences is gifted to the higher self as a resource to draw from in its efforts to serve and provide aid and guidance to that aspect of the self which is still evolving. Here's a quote from Ra. There is a dimension in which time does not have sway. In this dimension, the mind-body-spirit, in its eternal dance of the present, may be seen in totality. And before the mind-body-spirit complex, which then becomes a part of the social memory complex, is willingly absorbed into the allness of the one Creator, the entity knows itself in its totality. In the latter portion of the channeling sessions between Ra and the LoO group, there is a considerable focus given to the exploration of the Tarot and the archetypical mind of the Logos. The Tarot provides a means of studying the foundations of the mind of our solar Logos. It provides a map of the evolutionary processes awaiting the mind-body-spirit complex that culminate in the metaphysical polarization or the choice between the positive and negative paths of evolution. The Tarot is an artifact of the teachings given by Ra to the priests and initiates of the pyramids of ancient Egypt, though the version we see today contains many distortions and modifications, including additions from ancient Sumerian culture which introduced astrological symbolism. The Tarot system is structured around 3 cycles, first of mind, then of body, and finally of spirit. Each cycle contains 7 foundational aspects or stations: matrix, potentiator, catalyst, experience, significator, transformation, and the Great Way. These 3 cycles, each containing a repetition of the 7 stations, make up the 21 cards of the Tarot. The 22nd card represents the great choice that each soul must make to continue its evolution beyond third density. Ra describes the culmination of this choice in the following quote from session 77. Upon the foundation of transformation of each complex, with free will guided by the root concepts offered in these cycles, the Logos offered this density the basic architecture of a building and constructing and synthesizing of data, culminating in the choice. I've compiled a short list of resources for anyone interested in further exploration or study of the Law of One. The Law of One online at lawofone.info contains the complete edited text of the transcriptions of the 106 channeling sessions that make up the Law of One books. The LL Research Group maintains a website at llresearch.org that contains further information about their organization, as well as an online archive for their sizable library of channeling works and other writings tailored to spiritual seekers and students of metaphysics. They also maintain a community website and forum at bringforth.org. Scott Mandelker, a Law of One scholar, offers a series of lectures on the Law of One and makes them available for free on his YouTube channel, which I'll link below in this video's description. David Wilcock is a well-known researcher, author, lecturer, and host of several shows on the conscious media platform Gaia.com. He bases much of his extensive work on the teaching of the Law of One and refers back to these principles regularly. You can follow him at divinecosmos.com. Bentinho Massaro is a spiritual teacher and awake wanderer who offers cutting-edge teachings and retreats on self-awareness, self-empowerment, and self-mastery. His teachings are based on and congruent with the Law of One. You can follow his work at bentinhomassaro.com. You can learn more about me and my work at aaronmerritt.com. I also make available a downloadable PDF of this presentation on my website. See the link below for access. I hope this presentation opens a doorway into the profound and significant work that is the Law of One. May you find inspiration and peace in the teachings that help us to see that we are all united in our journey to realize the truth within and between us. I will leave you all with this final quote from Ra. The Confederation of planets in the service of the infinite Creator has only one important statement. That statement, my friends, as you know, is all things, all of life, all of the creation is part of the one original thought.